Yeah, Pat, over here. I just want to know what you have to say about the terrible spot that you put this Miami Heat team in. I mean, we literally finished 37 and 45 last season.
But we're not reflective of that, Anthony.
Not reflective. You know what? You're probably right because you're probably much worse than that considering you got blown out by 55 points at home in an elimination game. What do you have to say about that?
I think we have to make an adjustment, Anthony.
Ain't that the damn truth? But anyways, shout out to Anthony Chang for asking those questions and allowing me to get those sound bites. But of course, today was Pat Riley's much anticipated postseason press conference. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it was not a Wendy's, meaning there wasn't a lot of spicy nuggets, but there still was several interesting things to talk about it. I took a ton of notes, so let's go ahead and get into those. Now, but first I'd like to ask if y'all could please subscribe to the channel because 57.3% of y'all are not subscribed yet, and it does help me out a lot, so I do appreciate all the support. Let's get back into the video. To start, there was actually no initial monologue that he always likes to do. Probably my favorite Pat Riley quote of all time is the year after LeBron left, he slapped his hands on the table and said, "No smiling faces with hidden agendas. All right, I'm pissed." Whatever quotable thing you want to say. He didn't really give us one of those from the jump. Instead, when he was walking up to the table, he said, "Raise your hand if you were born after I started here." So I guess anybody over, 35 years old, however long Pat Riley's been here. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the press conference because there was a lot of jokey going around. And for a press conference that follows a season as miserable as this one was, I could have done without so many jokes. But at the same time, I kind of do appreciate Pat Riley bringing some levity to the situation. And I do like Pat Riley. I mean, what can I say? I mean, I think him and the front office as a whole, I don't want to put all the blame on him, but I think the front office as a whole has done a terrible job of team building and asset management over the last 5 or 6 years, really the whole Jimmy Butler era. But I still like Pat Riley, and I have a great deal of respect for everything he's brought this team and his organization over the years. But anyways, Ira Winderman got things started off rip, just talking about Jimmy Butler, which we know he hates Jimmy, because from the team exit interviews, he went on and his questions to Bam and Tyler, basically saying, how did y'all become leaders after Jimmy did this and that and left the team early and didn't fly at you? And he hates Jimmy. And immediately he asked Pat Riley just kind of about the whole Jimmy Butler situation. And Pat basically was very respectful of Jimmy, not only answering this question, but throughout the entire press conference. And as a fan, that made me happy because, one, he took the high road, as he should. But two, as a Jimmy Butler fan myself, I really want to see him get his jersey retired one day with the Miami Heat. And things ended so poorly, a lot of people didn't think it was possible. But for Pat Riley to kind of acknowledge that, yes, things ended badly, but I still have a great deal of respect for him, that gives me slight hope that maybe they can mend fences one day and eventually get his jersey retired, because Pat actually went into detail. He mentioned how he has a picture in his office of when Jimmy was leaning over the scorer's table in 2020. He also reminisces about the Jimmy three-pointer versus Al Horford in Game 7 versus Celtics, of course, the one that Jimmy missed. But Pat Riley said he was okay with the shot. He said when Jimmy raised to shoot that ball, he stood up and fully believed it was going in, and it's like we all did. That's how good Jimmy Butler was back then. So it was just nice to hear him show Jimmy Butler a great deal of respect. But all that being said, he did say that he's not going to apologize for the way things ended. And he also reiterated the whole keep your mouth shut comments. Basically said back in his day, if you lost, you couldn't say anything. You had to shut up. And I kind of do agree with his logic, to be honest, but he definitely did not apologize for those comments. He mentioned the deal that he took for Wiggins and Anderson and Davion Mitchell. He said it was the best deal they could have taken to help them win now and in the future. And truthfully, I think that's the problem. A lot of people are saying after the Jimmy trade that the Heat finally picked a direction. My response to that has been they didn't, which is what Pat Riley just said. The best deal to win now and in the future. And to me, that's stupid. I don't think you could half-ass a direction, which is what the Warriors tried doing these last several years with Kuminga, Moses Moody, and now you see they eventually traded the younger Wiggins for a better Jimmy Butler to try to win now. They picked the direction, which is what I think the Heat need to do too. I don't think you can play it both ways and try to be successful. I don't think it works, which is why I didn't like the Wiggins trade, because Wiggins is 30. He doesn't fit the timeline, makes a lot of money for a lot of years, and he does not a needle mover. So I do think that the Heat need to actually pick a direction, whether that's rebuild and go completely young, or maybe trade Tyler for a win now piece, a legitimate win now piece to try to win with Bam Adebayo, because Bam is not that young kid no more either. But Wiggins just doesn't really fit the timeline of those guys. That's why, as Pat Riley noted, best for win now in the future, which obviously they're not winning now anyways, but yeah, I just don't like that whole direction. He did mention that they have a lot of flexibility, which, again, I don't agree with because of that Wiggins contract. He's got so much money tied up in the books for the next couple of seasons, although the last one is a player option. It really doesn't give you that much flexibility. Not to mention that, yes, you do have an additional first-round pick to trade, but you could still get outbid by almost every other team in the league, which I don't want to hammer home that point because we've been talking about that in almost every video for the last month. I think you guys understand that at this point. Ira actually had a follow-up question, and then Pat asked if he had another follow-up question, and when Ira said yes, Pat just muttered under his breath, "Oh, Christ." I just wanted to note that because, as we constantly say too in these media interviews, none of the guys like Ira Winderman. I even asked Mario Chalmers about that when we did our podcast a couple years back. I was like, do any of the players like Ira? And Mario was like, not particularly. I don't know what it is against Ira. Maybe he's out there asking the hardest hitting questions, but maybe they just think he has an annoying voice. But very clearly the guys don't like Ira, although I do think Ira did a fine job today with asking the right questions. I know a lot of Heat fans wanted Pat Riley to be grilled and ask all these hard-pressing questions, and the truth of the matter is Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra too are the epitome of coach speak, meaning if they don't want to answer a question, they'll give you the runaround. So I don't really care how hard the questions they get asked are because they'll find a way not to answer it, just truthfully, if they don't want to answer it. But eventually, Pat Riley was asked about making changes, and he did acknowledge that changes are needed. He went on and on about tanking, says that they've only ever tried to tank twice, but he never told anybody. Said back in 2008, the year that, Dwayne Wade got hurt, they won like 15 games and they got Michael Beasley. He said they were tanking. He didn't tell no one, but they weren't really tanking. It's like he was afraid to admit that they were tanking. It's like if you watch his press conference, he has a weird relationship with tanking. He just refuses to ever even do it or admit that he did it, even though he said he did it twice, but then he backtracked in the very next sentence. It's just sort of a weird relationship with tanking. But as Heat fans, we all know they don't tank. That's why a couple videos ago, I posted a great video fully breaking down what a rebuild would look like. Trade Bam, trade Tyler, get 5 to 6 first-round picks, get the cap space, and go from there. But they will never do that. He'll never do a full fire sale. And is that a problem? Probably, because that's how a lot of the great teams we have today got to where they are at. He goes out of his way to highlight his resume, too, to say, oh, yeah, I know we don't tank, but we've only missed the playoffs X number of times, and we're 3-time champions, and this and this and that. And it's like, at some point, you got to stop talking about the past. What good are all these playoff appearances if you get your ass kicked in the first round like we just saw? It's not good at all. It's not beneficial at all. Like, oh, you made the playoffs. You had the biggest blowout playoff loss in history. I would have preferred to miss the playoffs. So, I don't know. I kind of a little bit too much talking about the past. There were some more jokes going on when one reporter asked about his retirement, or Pat Riley interrupted the question and asked the reporter if he was going to ask about his retirement. And the reporter's like, no, that's what Dave Hyde's going to do. So just a lot of joking back and forth. So there was plenty more of that. He was asked about the offense and said Spo will figure it out because, yes, the Heat have had like a bottom 5 offense for the last several seasons. I think it's more of a personnel issue on the team than Spoelstra, but Pat basically went on to say that he knows Spoelstra's been going through a lot of personal issues, and I want that to be noted too. I mean, there's no doubt about it that Spoelstra had a terrible season, but we've seen, in my opinion, this is the first bad season that we've seen to Spoelstra. I think he continually takes these rosters, these underachieving rosters, and overperforms with them. This is the first year we didn't see that. So I'm willing to give him benefit of the doubt that maybe some of these personal issues are affecting him, which should not happen. And if that happens on a consistent year-to-year basis, then yes, it's time to have a conversation about maybe letting him go. But it just makes you wonder. Of course, Spo had the divorce and everything like that, and I can't imagine how that would affect him. But Pat Riley did kind of make sure to hammer home that point. Then Pat was asked about how the team building is different nowadays with regard to free agency, and he says it's harder to plan now. All that stuff is very true. I mean, back in the day, we know how the Heat got LeBron and Bosh. They spent the previous few seasons lining up everyone's deals to be free agents that year. So they just had a ton of cap space to add 2 more max players to Dwayne Wade. And with today's CBA, you really can't afford 3 max players anyways and stay under the apron to remain competitive. But even with regards to the salary cap stuff, just free agency is not really the move no more, which I think harms the Heat because the luxurious draw that Miami has, they could have just said, hey, we have money. Who wouldn't want to come to Miami? Of course, players would want to come to Miami free agency. But now stars are mostly moved via trade. And while some stars have leverage in the trade market, depending how many years are left on their deal and such, like I think Kevin Durant has leverage as an expiring contract, and we'll definitely get into him. But with guys like Damian Lillard, he didn't have the final say. He wanted to come here. They couldn't get him here. And I do think that harms Miami because the luxurious draw of the city of Miami, it isn't worth as much anymore because even if players want to come here because of that draw, it doesn't mean they can get here. And to Pat's point, he said it's hard to plan nowadays, which is very true because free agency, if everyone makes it to free agency the year they're supposed to, easy to plan. Luka's a free agent in 27, Anthony Edwards a free agent in 28, blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, you have so many player options, so many team options, so many guys signing extensions, then demanding a trade the next year. You really have no idea when a guy's going to become available. And that's why tanking, in my opinion, is now more important than ever because that's how you get those tradable assets to go after a star. But if they're going to keep staying mediocre, middle of the pack, they're never going to have these assets to really get the star when they become available, and they're going to continue to get outbid. That's why I do think Pat Riley probably needs to change his philosophy on tanking. But he said he's not a fan of the new salary cap. Same thing for obvious reasons. Then he goes on some another joke tangent about this Ribbit commercial. It was, I guess, a Liberty commercial where this frog saying Ribbit or something. Went on and on for like 3 minutes straight about some commercial. I don't think anyone had any idea what he's talking about. But then he immediately finishes that tangent and follows it up with probably the most quotable thing of the entire press conference, which is, we probably won't run it back. People are taking that quote and running with it. And it's like, to me, I keep focusing on that word probably. Because yes, I'm sure he doesn't want to run it back, and he says they probably won't. But he followed that quote up with basically saying, we can't determine if a star wants to come here or not. Guys can be available, but it's not like they just magically appear. You got to make trades. And as we've been discussing, the Heat don't have a ton of assets to make trades. Now, I think it's possible. Like I said, they're not completely out on any of these guys, truthfully, whether it's Giannis or Durant or Zion or Trey or Ja. I don't think the Heat are 100% out. It's just not super likely is all. So if the Heat try to get a star and they can't, then they're going to run it back because he already said they're not going to rebuild. And we'll see what happens. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Ideally, they get the star. We don't even have to worry about it. But he did go on to say that they're in as good a situation as they could have ever been in terms of assets with picks and salary situation. That's a damn lie, because if you would have traded Jimmy Butler as soon as you knew you weren't going to pay him, you would have had a few more picks. But regardless, he went on to say if he's having any cognitive problems, he said 80 is the new 60. And it's like, part of the biggest reason I say Pat should probably call it quits and retire peacefully, go enjoy the Malibu sunset with your wife. It's because he's 80. I just think 80 is too old to be that high-ranking an official in any position. I mean, especially the president of the United States. But I guess that's just where we're at nowadays. They have all these old people running the country, running our team. It don't make sense to me. Like, there's a new way of doing things in today's game. And I guess in the country too, but it's not to get political, but just in today's game, there's a new way of getting stars at free agency. And if you still have this old school mindset, you're not going to get a lot done. I just think it's probably time for Pat Riley to move on. And while I don't think he has cognitive issues, because he was very well spoken, as he always is this press conference, that whole Ribbit tangent throws me for a bit of a loop. He did go on to say that philosophical and personnel changes are needed. And when I first heard that, I thought maybe he was talking about Spo, because he said personnel. But I think he was more so talking about the roster or maybe assistant coaches, because he did say later on that he expects Coach Spo to be there a lot longer, hopefully. And I kind of agree in terms of maybe getting some new assistants in there, because if you look at who they got now, you got Chris Quinn, Malik Allen, Caron Butler, Wayne Ellington. It's like a lot of former players who don't have a ton of experience as assistant coaches. I know Chris Quinn's been there a while, but it's just like, I think a different voice next to Spo could also be beneficial, just to kind of bounce some different ideas on him. Because obviously Spo's been here a long time. In a certain way, he's stubborn and stuck in his ways, which can be good in some aspects too. But I don't think it hurts to have a conflicting voice, because eventually you bounce ideas off each other and then you probably find the most optimal solution. Where if you just got Spo and a bunch of guys who played under Spoelstra, there's not a lot of different voices in there. It's just my outside take on it. But Spo would definitely be the head coach for a while. Then Pat was finally asked about the Tyler Hero extension. Spoke very highly of Tyler. Said he's one of the most ignitable guys. Said he hopes he stays here the rest of his career. And then said he's overly schemed against. And there will be a lot of 4 of 20 nights just because that's who he is. And I'm like, then you better not pay him anything close to a max. Because if you're complaining about him getting overly schemed, it's like, that's what happens to star players. They are going to try to double you and cut you off. And if your answer to that is shooting 4 or 20, you're not a max guy. And you're not someone that the team should build around or be on the roster for a long time, quite truthfully. But either way, what I kind of took out of that is a lot of people are thinking that Tyler is here for the long run. I think the opposite. Guys, we've been listening to Pat Riley talk for many, many years. Whenever he pumps a guy up, it's usually to get his trade value a little bit higher to move on from him. Think about last offseason. He wasn't positive with Tyler Hero. He called him fragile. And we know it's because he wanted to be hard on him, because he was going to keep him here and wanted him to use that as motivation. But as soon as he starts talking positive about someone, I think he may be gone. Just don't forget, I'm putting that out there. He talks about the tax a little bit and says how all these teams that are paying a lot of money, they will eventually be hurt by the second apron. And all that stuff is true. The Boston Celtics, they won their championship, so it's worth it. But all these other teams over the second apron, it's going to be a very interesting experiment to see what happens to them. You got the Phoenix Suns, who are stinky, but they're way over the second apron. And there is harsh penalties that are associated with that. So as much as we all like to say, oh, Mickey Arison is cheap, he doesn't want to pay the luxury tax, I truly believe if he actually thinks they have a contender, he'll pay the luxury tax. I know he didn't do it for Jimmy Butler, but those teams, they weren't definitive contenders, I would say. But yeah, there is penalties to being a second apron team, so I don't fully blame them for not wanting to go out and spend all this money all willy-nilly. He does say they'll try to avoid the repeater tax, which is where you're over the salary tax for multiple years in a row, which says that he says that they'll try to avoid that, but maybe getting out of it next year and getting back into it, which to me, that kind of sounds like a sell-off, because how do you get under the tax? They're currently a first apron team, so they're over the tax. The only way to get under it, selling some pieces. So that is interesting to hear about. Ira did ask specifically about maxing out Tyler Hero on his extension. Pat basically said that Hero answered it perfectly a week ago, as if to say it's not something we have to deal with right now. He said he spoke to Hero about it, and it just sounds like those talks will be tabled probably until next offseason. And then this was the other interesting part of the press conference today, I'd say, is when Pat Riley was asked about basically going after an older player, and he said he's not opposed to it. Now, he mentioned LeBron and how good LeBron's still performing, and I don't really like when people use LeBron as the example, because he's the outlier in almost every single case, just because of how good his sustained success has been. But it was pretty clear that he was talking about Kevin Durant. The one takeaway, if you want to take away anything from this, is that Pat Riley is very interested in Kevin Durant. Now, we posted a video yesterday reacting to a Bleacher Report article. They predict Durant will come to Miami. Of course, I've posted multiple Durant videos before, and we'll do more this offseason as rumors come out. But I do think after this press conference, the Heat are definitely interested in Kevin Durant. But that doesn't mean Durant will be interested in us. And as we said earlier, on the last year of his deal, I think he'll kind of dictate where he wants to go. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes out with a list and if Miami will be on it, because if he wants to contend, I think that he could contend with Durant if they're able to keep, a starting lineup of Davion, Tyler, Wiggins, or I guess Tyler, Wiggins, Durant, Bam, and Ware. I don't know what they would do there, but I just kind of like the idea of a Tyler, KD, Bam, Wiggins core, for all the reasons that we've been discussing this offseason. I think that team could be really, really good. Will Durant think so? Probably not, at least not compared to like a Timberwolves team, who I'm sure will pursue him also, or a Rockets team who might pursue him. If you're watching this video, then you are an elite ball knower, so why not take advantage of it with MyBookie? Listen, y'all, throughout the NBA playoffs, I'll be using their live betting feature to smash the Davion Mitchell overs and smash the Rudy Gobert unders, and then using their early cash out option to stack up the profits. If you want to do the same, make sure to sign up for MyBookie using promo code MM50, which will instantly boost your first deposit. And then once the games wrap up, you can check out their casino, which has blackjack and slots and roulette, you name it. Bet on anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Now let's get back into the video. But anyways, he was asked how to avoid the play-in, and Pat Riley's response to that was, well, we weren't a play-in team the first couple of years because we were technically 7th or 8th seed, which is a playoff team, until they added the play-in rules. So he said the only time we were a play-in team was this last year when we were 10. And to me, that's stupid because a 7 or 8 team by definition is a play-in team. It's no longer a playoff team. It used to be, but not anymore. And that goes back to Pat Riley's old school thinking of things are the way they used to be. That's not the case. You got to get with the times. And Pat Riley saying that 7 or 8 is a playoff team is just no longer accurate. It's not. But he does say and to actually answer the question of how to avoid the play-in, he says they need to make the roster better, the offense better, and the defense better. I guess. I don't have a problem with that answer. I mean, it's all true. It's kind of a cop-out answer. I wish he would have explained how they plan on doing that, but he already said they're going to try to get a start. If they can't do it, I guess they won't make the roster better. Then I heard the sweet voice of our guy, Brendan Tobin, ask a question, and I said, oh God, I had to sit down, and I said, what is Tobin going to say now? Because if y'all aren't familiar, Brendan Tobin has a history of asking questions that lead to some very controversial answers by Pat Riley. Of course, there was the one where Pat Riley said there's an asterisk on the team. I forget the main ones with Tobin, but y'all know what I'm talking about. He always unintentionally starts something. But this time Tobin asked about the narrative of today's players not wanting to play for Heat culture. And then Pat Riley just basically went on this whole spiel about how it is what it is. If they don't want to come here, he can't do nothing about it. But then he said he's very proud of Heat culture. He was able to rip off the whole motto, hardest working, unselfish, toughest, nastiest, meanest team in the NBA. Probably forgot some of them, but he did not. He still knows the whole motto by heart like this. And he basically said he's proud of it. And my response to that is, well, where the hell is it? Where the hell is this culture that you speak of? Because looking at the roster that I just saw this past postseason that literally quit, that literally had multiple guys getting hunted on defense, that's not Heat culture. At least not the Heat culture that I grew up on. And that just goes back to what else we've been saying this offseason, in which is Heat culture doesn't mean nothing no more. It's nothing but a brand at this point. But no, ask Pat Riley. He says the culture is the same regardless of the Butler situation. But hopefully by some of those philosophical changes he mentioned earlier, they can get some more dogs like Davion Mitchell and get rid of some of these guys who are not the Heat culture. Eventually, Pat Riley was asked about the Spoelstra promotion to front office role, kind of like Brad Stevens and what we just got with El Jefe, Greg Popovich. And he just went on to say that Spo just needs some time, go take a vacation, said he's going to Hawaii. But Spo will basically remain the head coach. And he said that Spo's in good health, and so is he. Pat Riley said his health is good. So as far as executive, he doesn't plan on going anywhere. And of course, I hope Pat Riley's health remains good. You are healthy until you're not. You know, sometimes life works in unfortunate ways and stuff just happens out of nowhere. But, you know, God bless Pat Riley and hope his health stays okay. Will Mansell then got on the mic and asked Pat Riley a question that we've all been talking about for the last couple of months is, can Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo be 1As? His answer started by saying, well, we traded for Iguodala, Solomon Hill, and Jay Crowder without trading an alpha. And I'm like, and that team that you traded those, auxiliary pieces for, you traded them to a team that had Jimmy Butler, who is an alpha. So making the same kind of lateral move for some decent role players and bringing them into a team that does not have an alpha, because Tyler and Bam, we all know, are not alphas. They're not 1As on contenders. What is that going to do for you? I just didn't really like that answer by him. But he would say that Bam has an alpha personality and Tyler Hero has alpha confidence, but basically acknowledged that no, he doesn't think they're alphas. And that belief by me is even more confirmed because he then went on a 5-minute tangent, basically giving a runaround of why they're not alphas and Jimmy Butler is. Because he went out of his way to once again bring up Jimmy Butler and everything he did here. And as a listener, it was very clear to me that he knows Jimmy's built different than those two guys, and they need to get another player in here, the status of Jimmy Butler. And said as long as they can bring in a superstar who affects winning but doesn't have an ego or is humble, then we're cool with it because winning is all that matters. And I'm like, well, which is it then? Is winning all that matters? Or do you want a superstar who doesn't have an ego? Because reality check, Pat, not a lot of superstars don't have an ego. So I thought that was a little bit hypocritical by Pat Riley because you want to win or not. Sometimes you get the superstar and you just deal with it if it means winning. And that's what I think they should have did with Jimmy Butler. And then lastly, he was asked about tanking once again and just mentioned this wild idea that Andy Ellisberg has of after the first 50 games, if you're a losing team, you can claim that you're a lottery team. And then the clock starts after that, and whichever one of those teams wins the most games out of the last 32 get boosted odds in the draft lottery. Something idiotic like that. But that's how against tanking Pat Riley, Andy Ellisberg, and the rest of the Heat front office is they come up with dumb ideas like that. But anyways, I've been talking for almost 30 minutes here. That's really all I got to say about this video. But let me know some of y'all thoughts down below about what Pat Riley said today and kind of what stood out to you. I might drop a video tomorrow that's a kind of a part 2 to this, doing like a Pat Riley translator, maybe a little skit type of thing. I just kind of got the idea a little bit earlier today, so I'll see if I can execute it. But either way, like this video, subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city, tryna get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.